Now we're going to move on to another couple of our state demonstrations. These are put together by the members of the Australian Floral Art Association. In this session, we're firstly going to see a demonstration from the Floral Art Guild of the ACT, the Australian Capital Territory, and then that will be followed by one from the Floral Art Society of Queensland. The Floral Art Guild of the Australian Capital Territory is represented today by their current president, Naira Gamak, who is also a member of New South Wales Floral Art Association and on the National Management Committee of the Australian Floral Art Association.
Are you filming? Honestly, not yet. Don't film yet. Greetings everyone. My name is Naira Gamak and I am demonstrating to you today on behalf of the Floral Art Guild of the ACT. That is the Australian Capital Territory, the capital of Australia, known to most people as just plain Canberra. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I'm doing this demonstration, the Ngunnawal people. I wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution that they have made to this city and to our surrounding regions. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are watching today. I would also like to thank the Australian Floral Art Association and in particular the Floral Art Association in New South Wales for inviting me to demonstrate. My design today is called Canberra 2021, which has been a very interesting year for everybody, I would say. At the base of the design I've used a floral foam wreath, which I have then covered in she oak. She oak is a very, very versatile and very interesting material because you can pull it together or you can leave it as it is and bend it and secure it, and has a lovely bend to it so that it lends itself to being draped around the wreath. In the middle I have two granite boulders, and they actually are covered in shells. They're quite shell encrusted in different areas. They have holes bored into them. I didn't do it, I'm not that strong, so that they can hold other materials and they can hold water. This particular boulder seemed to sit down too far into the design, and so I've raised it on a upturned plate, and then I've covered that with brown material, and inside I put a lot of river stones. This represents the city of Canberra. It represents the region of the ACT. We are really surrounded by a lot of bush. I've also added in there a little bit of a bottle brush, callistemon, and they're just in bud at the moment and they're going to be looking very, very nice very, very soon. Bit of gum leaf. What can you do without gum leaf? Australian bush is full of gum. And the other thing that I have in here, and it might be a little bit difficult to see at the moment, is this particular blue plant which I've put in here to represent a bit of water and the Murrumbidgee River, and it's called Digger's Sawwell, and it is an Australian native, and you can probably see from the leaf of it that it does look like a eucalypt. The Murrumbidgee River flows through Canberra, as I just said, and it was dammed to make Lake Burley Griffin. So I'll just add in a few more just to give this idea of the water flowing into the lake. Unfortunately, it's a man-made lake, and so for that reason it tends to have a few problems because it doesn't have the natural movement that a lot of water would do, or a lot of natural lakes would do. Unfortunately, I can't lift it because these are very, very heavy, but that's my original structure. There's the mountains, the bush, and the river and the lake. Ah, the magic of television. You might have noticed, or maybe you didn't, I might have added a few more things while I was gone. Also put on a bit more lippy. You notice that the only thing that actually gets thinner during COVID is your lips. Now, I've added a bit of bark, and the bark is prevalent in Canberra. It is draping from the trees, and it's the best place to start gathering bark, as some people will tell you. I've added it through into the holes into the granite boulders, and then I've added a little bit of she oak up the top to bring the design through. I've also added at the bottom a couple more things because we're open to a lot of pastures in the ACT, and so therefore we get a lot of grasses and grass seeds that come through to Canberra. The problem with that is, of course, that some of the grasses are not too bad, but some of the grasses are quite noxious, particularly one that is known as African lovegrass. It is not something that we like having in the territory, and it's something that we would really like to be avoided. But it's like Patterson's curse because it's very, very beautiful when it's out. It looks gorgeous in its lovely smoky pink waves across the top, across the slopes and across the hills. But it is detrimental to our countryside. So I've added a couple of grasses in. You can see just into the design some coming through. And then the other thing that I've done is that I have bound some of the she oak. Now what happens with the she oak, if you bind it, it's like binding jute or something else like that, where if you bind it you get nice shapes and you can twist it. If you bind it with wire you can bend it and make it look exactly how you want it to be and where you want it to go. So I have made a rainbow serpent, and my rainbow serpent is made with just twisting the coloured wool, the rainbow wool, around the she oak. And I'll put that into the design just to make sure that it goes exactly where I want it to go, which is always the wrong place, as you know. And I'll put that in here and bring it in around underneath this design here. And now you can see, and I'll pull the things over the top, and now you can see my rainbow serpent, which is a very, very important thing to the Aboriginal people as part of their legend and as part of their folklore. This rainbow serpent is disappearing down in behind the boulder and into the design. The second thing that I have to counter that is another rainbow serpent, which I'm going to now add to this side of the design so that it looks like it's coming up and out of the design from the rest of the area. And I'll bring him up in here. He's, the good thing about using bark is that you can split it and that you can have things there, and I just like the little tuft of orange on the end. So that gives you an idea, just bringing that rainbow serpent up through the design, creating more negative space, and then the busyness of the design underneath. Not so long ago, I bought a bunch of malacca balm, or Irish bells, and I didn't use it, and I was really cross with myself, and I thought, I'm not going to waste it. So I tried to see how it would go dried, and I found that it went really, really well. I probably shouldn't have left it so long as it was already starting to wilt, but you can see that if you dried it fresh, these areas in here would be really, really good. So I've added a couple of those pieces of dried malacca balm just in here in a couple of areas, here and here, just to highlight the dryness of our area once it gets to summertime, and how vulnerable we are to fires and flood and hail and COVID, everything else. So we are a little protected area within Canberra and our ring of bushland around, but then there are a couple of people, naughty people, people that you and I know about, who decide that they're going to cross the border. And they're going to cross the border into New South Wales, and from New South Wales they're going to come into the ACT. And all of a sudden we start to get a little bit of coronavirus starting up in our city. A little bit of spotty virus that is actually causing concern. So King Andy said, I am going to lock down the city. I'm going to close the borders, and I'm going to pull up the drawbridge, and no one is getting in here because Queen Gladys hasn't been handling things very well, and now we're vulnerable. And then Queen Gladys says, well, it's your fault, King Andy, because if it hadn't have been for the ACT, it wouldn't have got into the regional areas around New South Wales. And so it's our fault. And Lord Balalaro said that it was our fault that it got down to the coast as well, because they found it in the sewage. Now King Andy said, well, I don't know how they discern which is Canberra sewage and which is New South Wales sewage, but obviously he's got a degree in sewage detection. So the next thing we know, King Dan says, well, I'm staying closed, no one's coming into Victoria. And Queen Anastasia said, well, no one's coming up here to Queensland. And King Mark said, well, no one's coming into Western Australia this century. And then, before you know it, we've got everyone. We've got King Steve, we've got King Peter, we've got King Michael, and we've got everybody who has now decided that they're going to shut their borders to everyone. And so we're in lockdown. And King Andy said, well, don't worry about that, everyone. We'll do the best we can to keep the ACT happy and healthy. So what we'll do is that we'll lift up all the pots from Floral Art. We won't be able to have Floral Art this year, but we'll lift up all the pots and we'll take the pots out into the suburbs. And that's what they did. And so whenever I go to a local shopping centre, I know that I will be able to see lots and lots of pots, of bulbs and of plants and of pretty colours, and a reminder to us that eventually COVID will pass. Eventually we'll move on and we'll get out of our 2-week lockdown. We were luckier than most other states, much luckier than other states, and we shouldn't complain. And for some of us, I think that we quite like being in lockdown at times, because it's a little bit more our time, me time. And of course, one of the big losers, and probably the big winners in all this, is the Floral Art group from New South Wales who has actually pulled all this together, and I give them great congratulations on what they have done. So in the end, we might have had COVID, we might have had a lockdown, but in the end we have a rainbow city. The rainbow serpent has struck again and our city has come alive. Thank you for watching the demonstration today.
So thank you, Nari, for that interesting insight into what lockdown was like in Canberra in the ACT, and how all of the other politicians ganged up on the ACT and made it so that it was very difficult for anyone to travel anywhere. But we are very happy that Nari was able to get out of the dressing gown and give us that demonstration. Our next demonstration is from the Floral Art Society of Queensland. They are represented today by Elizabeth O'Sullivan, who, as you will hear, is a member of not one, not two, but 3 floral art groups.
Welcome from Queensland. Hi, my name is Elizabeth O'Sullivan and I'm a member of 3 floral art clubs, the Queensland branch, Caboolture and Nambour. I'm also a trainee judge. I've been doing floral art for 12 years now, but I'm relatively a novice at demonstrating and in particular videotaping myself. So it has been a challenge. I do hope, however, that you will find my demonstration interesting. Well, to start, my design has been inspired by the surroundings around where I live, which is Elimbah. Elimbah is in southeast Queensland, halfway between Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast. Well, I've got this beautiful vase here, which is going to be just right for my design. The pattern on the vase reminds me of the Aboriginal paintings where they use the dots and the lines to depict their stories, and the colouring of the vase is also perfect. So on the top of the vase I've placed a candle cup, and I've got a fair amount of oasis because of the heavy material I'll be placing in there. I've secured the candle cup to the vase with short stick, and I've covered the mechanics using a couple of cordyline leaves. Well, to the north of Elimbah, you'll find the Glasshouse Mountains, which is now on the National Heritage Register. Now, how did the Kaisos Mountains get its name? Well, in 1770, Captain James Cook, when he was sailing up the east coast, spotted the mountains in the distance, and he wrote in his journal that it reminded him of the glass house back in his hometown in Yorkshire. But what he really meant to write down was that the mountain peaks reminded him of the glass furnaces. So the Glasshouse Mountains are actually volcanic plugs, which were formed over 25 million years ago, and there are 10 of them. Well, the highest and largest of the Glasshouse Mountains is Mount Biwa. And the Glasshouse Mountains are actually a sacred place to the local Indigenous people, the Kabi people. They regard Mount Biwa as the mother of the mountains. So in one of my walks, I've got a nature strip next to my place. I found this piece of wood and it's quite lightweight, and I thought, oh, that reminds me of Mount Biwa. So I'm going to use it as my first placement. Now, nearest to Ilimba is the town of Caboolture, the name being derived from the Aboriginal expression referring to the place of the carpet snake. But what they really mean is the carpet python. So I went looking for something that looked like a snake, and I have this piece of lovely wood, and I said, this is perfect. I'm going to place it so the head of the snake is looking up to Mount Biwa. There. Now, I've had experience with a carpet snake. A few years ago when I was living just south of Caboolture, we decided to raise some chickens. However, after I put some time later, the chickens were disappearing one by one. And the culprit was the local carpet snake that was living next door to us in their property there. Well, while I'm filling the back of this, I'll talk a little bit about the Glasses Mountains. Nearby Mount Biwa is Mount Tubagagan and Mount Gungun. These are very attractive places to rock climbers, abseilers and hikers. But the local Kabi people would prefer if the rock climbers didn't go up Mount Biwa, as out of respect of the mother of the mountains. Now, just to give you an idea of how popular the places are, in 2019, 28,000 people climbed up Mount Biwa, 24 up Mount Tubagagan, and 88,000 went up Mount Gungun. Now, with all these people climbing up these mountains, there's sure for some of them to get stuck. So in the past 2 years, the state emergency services were called out 110 times to rescue these people, sometimes having to resort to helicopters to winch them to safety. Now, at the base of these mountains is good farming land. So we grow pineapples, but there's banana plantations and also strawberries. And actually next to our place is a small strawberry farm. So also grown on the Sunshine Coast is the coastal banksia, or the Banksia integrifolia. Named by Sir Joseph Banks in 1770 when he was going through his travels, he collected the coastal banksia, and it was one of 4 species of banksia that he took back to England. Now the banksia has got these flower spikes, yellow flower spikes, short flower spikes, and at the top of the leaves is like a dull green, but underneath the fabulous colour, the silver colour is there, and this is why it's lovely to use. So the coastal banksia is going to be perfect in my design because it picks up on the colour of the container. I shall put my first placement to the side. I might put this one here. There. And this one I think I'll put to the front. The stems are not straight, that's why it's difficult. I might put one at the back for depth. There. Now I grow the candle banksia, and the flower spikes are much larger than these. And when they're in flower, the cockatoos come and raid the place. They love chewing off the flower spikes and making a right old mess with everything. Now alongside, there's a long road from Ilimba that stretches right up to Landsborough on the Sunshine Coast, called the Steve Irwin Way. And that is because Australia Zoo is located on that road. And as you know, Australia Zoo was made famous by Steve Irwin and his wonderful documentaries, which have been shown worldwide. I'm just doing a little bit more filling in of the gaps. Okay. Right. Now, to depict that Mount Bewa was once a volcano, I decided that I might use this amaranthus to represent the lava that would have flowed out of the mountain at some stage in time. So I've got a little space here. I can put one piece of amaranthus, and to give the colour balance, I might put another piece down here. Right, and I'm going to give it a friend, as Francine Thomas likes to say when she does her demos. Give it a friend. There. Now there's a lot of texture happening now in my design, and I need to have some calming material, or smooth material I should say. So I've got these rolled cordyline leaves that I will place in the front. And the reason for that is I need to repeat some of that colour of red between the two amaranthus placements. And this is like I've got a burgundy colour in it. And I'm doing it also to cover the foam easily. Okay, so where you have volcanic peaks, you'll also find pumice, and pumice is found everywhere along the coastline. So pumice is created when highly pressurised rock is violently ejected from the volcano. Now, I'll show you, this is a piece of pumice, and it's used in the cosmetic industry to smooth rough skin. Unfortunately, it doesn't remove wrinkles. What I've done though is I've taken small pieces of pumice and hot glued them onto each other, and I've also hot glued in some wire for easy insertion. So I'm going to put the pumice in at the front. I'll just turn this around so I can see what I'm doing. And what this will also do is that pick up on the silver colour of the Banksia leaf. Right. Now I've just got to put one more placement at the top there to give a little bit of depth, and I want to show off that silver leaf as well up there. There we go. Now I've been speaking about what's to the north of Elimbah. Well, half an hour drive east, you come across Bribie Island. And Bribie Island is a special place. 1/3 of it is the National Park. There is a channel between Bribie Island and the mainland. And in 1799, when Matthew Flinders was sailing up the channel, he named it Palmerston River, not realising that Bribie was actually an island. And of course, he saw the pumice on the shoreline, and that is why he named it Palmerston River. But this was later changed to Palmerston Passage. Palmerston Passage is a marine park, home to dugongs, dolphins, turtles, and migratory shorebirds. So I've just about completed my design. I only need to put one more placement in. And to do that, I'm going to use this material, which is called a foxtail fern. Its botanical name is Costus blackeye. It comes in a sturdy stem, and I can see how it would be good used in cascading designs because of its length. But here I'm going to cut off the small tufts to hide my mechanics. especially at the front here. I can see a little bit of my bamboo sticks that I used to secure the wood into. So I'll cut these little tufts off, just providing a different texture, which is a bit feathery, I think. One more and I think I'm done. Ah, there you go. And that completes my design inspired by my surroundings. I would like to thank the following people for helping me put this demo together. I'd like to thank Lyndall Van Zanden for providing me with this wonderful vase, Lynn Zayner for sourcing these Banksia flowers for me, to Sue Fingleton and Beryl Robinson for their advice, and especially to Judith Little for teaching me the importance of using the principles and elements when designing. And last of all, thank you to Moreton Bay Region Industry and Tourism for their lovely photo of the Palmerston Passage. Well, that's all for now. Cheers from sunny Queensland.
I'd like to have a special thank you to Nari for her interpretation of her City of Canberra. Absolutely wonderful looking at how you have interpreted with the things that you've used. Absolutely beautiful. And also the interpretation from Liz of the Glasshouse Mountains. Spectacular vase to start with, but just all the wood and the floral that you've used has just made it into a stunning arrangement. That was very inspiring. So lastly, thank you very much to all of you and best wishes, and keep designing.